have this population that existed here many hundreds of years before we existed. We are recognized as our first people, and we saw it fit to ensure that it is legislative. We have what we call a 2006 Amerindian Act in place, which speaks to the rights of our Amerindian people, which speaks to land ownership, critically land ownership, because we're probably one of the few countries in the world where there is title land ownership for our indigenous people. We have over 100 communities with satellite villages that are titled and have communal ownership of their land. Most of the extractive economic activities that are carried out within that space is controlled by villages, or it is given an objection to by the village for outsiders to carry out economic activities within their boundaries. And I say that to give an example, if there are minerals in a particular area that is occupied by Amerindian people and it's a title village, the only way a coastland, as we refer to them, can go and mine in that village is if there's an agreement between them and the village council. Because we have elected leaders of those each village with the council. There must be consent before the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission, which is responsible for mining, issue a mining permit. So we have that clearly legislative. The land ownership, we are very pleased with that. Right now, we're looking at some of the communities that have been applied for extension to their boundaries. And I'm proud to say that 12-14% of our population actually owns almost 15 to 18% of our land. That is the extent of the ownership of these villages. It is a large portion of land. Most of them are mineral rich too. What we do have to, as specified in the Amerindian Act, is the FPIC process. And I'm sure that is very familiar around the world, especially where indigenous people are free, prior, informed consent. So it is not us as government making decisions and imposing it on Amerindian communities or indigenous people, but they're actually involved in the decision making process. They decide what development they would like to see in their community. They decide on which economic activities best suited for their community and their people. Guyana is one of the first countries in the world that will have signed a jurisdictional carbon credit deal with Guest Corporation, one of the oil companies in the US, for 750 million US dollars over a 10-year period for 30% of our carbon credits. We have that. This is the fourth year of implementation of that deal, and we have made a decision along with the elected leaders of those villages who are gathered once a year in the capital city to meet with the president and his cabinet and other policy makers, that we would have decided to get around the table that at least 15% of the proceeds that come into our country through the sale of carbon credit will be transferred directly to every single indigenous community in our country. And we have over 240 indigenous communities in our village, in our country, sorry. 100 and something like title, but we have satellite villages too. We have a few referring communities that are considered to be in that category. So every single year we transfer directly into those villages' accounts monies that comes in from the sale of carbon credit. Who manages that account? The villages themselves. Who decide how they spend it and what they spend it on? The village themselves. We have just laid out the procedure that the leader of the village must meet with at least 2/3 of the residents, and you decide on your project. You decide on how you want to spend this money. You decide on what economic project is best suited for you that will generate an income and create employment for your people, especially the young people in those communities. And they have done so successfully. Over the last 4 years of implementation of this project, we have seen over 2,000 projects being implemented by the villagers themselves, executed, built, operated, maintained, and the proceeds go to the villagers. They employ people from the village too. So that has been quite a success story for us dealing with our indigenous people in Guyana. And most of them, I knew, live in the forests. We have been working with them to create what we call the forest economy. We we have one of the lowest deforestation rates in the world, and we have made a commitment that we are going to keep it that way. But how do we continue to incentivize and make the forestry sector lucrative and profitable without cutting more trees? And that is value added. The forest economy. How can we earn money from the forest other than just cutting trees? We have seen honey production in Guyana grow from 4,000 liters to 40,000 liters over the past 5 years. Indigenous communities again involved in it. We have seen the growth in our ecotourism growing from in the last 5 years to about 10 to 20%, mostly indigenous communities because they're the ones who are involved in ecotourism. So these are some of the projects that government has been working closely with indigenous communities, and the transfer of funds from the sale of carbon credit is just one form of funding that goes to these communities. Funds will flow through our national budget, it flows through our regional budget, and there are many NGOs and friendly organizations that work in our country. So there are other forms of funding that are available to the indigenous people, the Amerindian people of our country. The on the trans boundary issue, I fully agree with everything that was said in terms of cooperation, collaboration, and how important of it. But I want to congratulate the South African countries for their will for working together. I'm happy that Permanent Secretary said they don't fight anymore, they don't fight the talk, which is good. But for transboundary cooperation to really work, political will must be there. And we are faced with an issue like that because we have a neighbor in the form of Venezuela that is claiming 2/3 of our land. Now, how is it possible for us to have greater collaboration and cooperation when the political will is lacking, when there are controversy that still exists over the boundaries that are being basically decided over 100 years ago, and we have to expend energies and monies and resources in sorting these things out in this modern age when we could have spent that on the development of our people. So I congratulate South African countries because they seem to have a very good model that is working. A model that we have with Brazil, for example, our main ally and closest neighbor. We have had excellent relationship, collaboration, sharing of information and data, sharing of expertise because the Brazilians are very good in mining, they're very good in farming and farming techniques and the use of technology in which we are lacking. And we have really we have really strengthened that relationship of collaboration and cooperation with Brazil more than any one of our neighbors. Mr. Muniz, who's in charge of land management in Guyana, he's working with the entire CARICOM on a land use policy for the entire CARICOM because we are more linked to the Caribbean and CARICOM than South America. So right now on the other side, we have had good collaboration and cooperation with them too, but Brazil has been our main neighbor that has really helped us, especially in expanding our agriculture sector and providing those economic opportunities and that we could work on our own and realize on our own. And this has really helped significantly our indigenous community, especially because those are the people that are mostly involved in agriculture in our country. They have done so for centuries and they continue to do so. Thank you.